The courtroom was aged in the way small-town buildings often are: exposed brick walls, lacquered with benches smoothed by time, and ceiling fans that buzz with more authority than most of the attorneys who stood beneath them. It wasn't the sort of place that made headlines. This was where folks argued over barbed wire placement, legacy water permits, or zoning disputes with a kind of gritty resolve. The kind of courthouse where time moves slower and grudges aged like whiskey. But on a quiet Wednesday morning, inside that worn building in Pine Hollow County, something happened that would not only reach every corner of America, but reframe what the country thought it knew about class, dignity, and the power of one man standing his ground. At the center of it all was Hank McAllister. 61 years old, lean but sturdy, his skin toughened by decades of sun and wind, flannel shirt tucked into jeans that had long since faded into their own version of denim history. His boots were scuffed, not from fashion, but from fields the kind of wear that soybeans and livestock deliver, one stubborn step at a time. He had been summoned to court after challenging an eminent domain seizure filed by the county in partnership with a private solar development firm. They wanted his 110-acre plot. He wanted them to leave it alone. It was the same land his family had farmed for 4 generations. The same dirt his father had plowed, his mother had seeded, and he himself had nearly lost 1 year during a flash flood. It wasn't just soil. It was memory. They had offered him a check. He had torn it in half, slow and silent. When asked why he refused to cooperate, Hank answered, "I'm not being stubborn. I'm protecting history." And so, he stood alone, that Morningno attorney beside him, just a tan folder clutched in weathered hands and his old straw hat resting flat on the desk beside him. Across the courtroom sat Judge Meredith Caldwell, 47 years old, Yale-educated, blazer-pressed, reputation sharper than her black pumps. She was known for her impatience with what she called local color, and a particular disdain for courtroom drama. She ruled quickly, cleanly, and with a belief that the law should be devoid of sentiment. When Hank rose to speak, he did so slowly, with a thick Midwestern drawl that didn't apologize for its cadence. "Your Honor," he began, "I ain't no lawyer, but I know what's right. That land raised babies and buried grandfathers, and I ain't handing it over to some solar board no matter how shiny their suits are." Judge Caldwell didn't interrupt. Not with her mouth, anyway. She raised one eyebrow, leaned back, and turned slightly toward the court stenographer. Then she laughed. Not a quiet chuckle. Not the restrained sound of someone trying to hide disdain. It was sharp, loud, dismissive. "Well, my stars," she said loud enough for every seat in the gallery to catch it, "I can't tell if we're holding a land rights hearing or the state hog-calling championship." There was a hush that followed, not of reverence, but of recoiling. The bailiff stiffened. A teenager in the back covered her mouth. A freelance reporter nearly dropped his pen. Hank didn't move. He didn't even blink. Slowly, he lifted a single yellowed sheet from his folder, walked with measured steps to the podium, and laid it in front of the judge. "Before you go on Logan and how I talk," he said in a steady tone, "you might want to read what your great-granddad wrote in 1931. The room froze. "What did you just say?" Judge Caldwell asked, but her voice had lost its edge. "That letter," Hank said, nodding at the aged page sealed in a clear protector, "was written by Judge Franklin Caldwell, signed and stamped right here in Pine Hollow County. My grandfather was his clerk. He helped him write it. The letter wasn't typed. It bore no legal citations. It was handwritten, cursive slanting like the old penmanship lessons, a Missouri state emblem pressed into the corner." Meredith Caldwell glanced down at it, reluctantly pulled her glasses from her coat pocket, and began to read aloud. "To the citizens of Pine Hollow, should a day ever come when men of office conspire with laws of convenience to tear a man from his soil, may this letter remind you. No court can overrule a landowner's truth, and no title can quiet the voice of dignity. Signed, Franklin J. Caldwell, Circuit Court Judge, 1931. Silence dropped like a curtain. The judge went pale. The entire courtroom held its breath. What had started as a procedural hearing over property had become something else entirely a reckoning. Hank's voice was calm when he stepped forward again. "My granddad wrote those words by hand while your great-granddad dictated them," he said. "Back then, They didn't call it accent discrimination. They called it plain disrespect. And if you think how I talk makes me dumb, then maybe you ought to hang that robe next to the one he wore, 'cause he knew better. The corporate attorney from Soul Harvest Energy sputtered. Your Honor, we object, this is irrelevant. But the crowd wasn't buying it. A Vietnam vet in the back stood up. Two teenagers near the wall exchanged wide-eyed glances. Phones were recording now. Voices whispered. We're watching something bigger than a trial. Hank turned to the bench. I didn't come a win with big words. I came to tell the truth. And you laughed at it like it was a joke. The courtroom didn't erupt. It stood still. There was a weight to the silence, now heavier than embarrassment. Closer to shame. The judge recessed the hearing. But by then, the damage had been done. A 47-second video clip, captured on an iPhone by a high schooler in the gallery, surfaced online by afternoon. Captioned simply, Judge laughs at farmer defending family land. It went viral in minutes. By sundown, it had 80,000 shares. By morning, every major news site had covered it. Conservative forums, farming coalitions, even Reddit had picked it up. The commentary was relentless. This is what classism looks like. She laughed at a man for speaking the way his ancestors spoke. Her own great-grandfather would have been ashamed. Petitions demanding Judge Caldwell's recusal surged past 250,000 signatures. Videos from farmers across the Midwest poured in under the tag, I stand with Hank. One woman from Iowa, her toddler on one hip and muck boots on her feet, said, I don't care if he talks like Shakespeare or spits tobacco if he's fighting for his land. You listen. Cable anchors echoed the same sentiment. This isn't about soybeans anymore, one evening host said. It's about whose voices matter in a courtroom. But Hank wasn't watching. He was in his kitchen, coffee in hand, the weather report murmuring from the small TV. His wife, June, rolled out biscuit dough on the counter behind him. I didn't ask for any of this, he said. June placed a hand on his shoulder. You didn't need to, she said. You were heard. Judge Caldwell didn't return to the bench that week. Her chambers stayed locked. Her name, once associated with efficiency, was now plastered beside words like elitist and disgraced. And still, the footage kept spreading. By the weekend, a civil liberties attorney named Nora Bright reached out to Hank. Known for her pro bono work defending whistleblowers and small-town clients, she said this case wasn't about money. It was about principle. When she met Hank at his farm, she told him, I'm not here to give a speech. I'm here to make sure you don't have to. He replied, I just want to hold on to what was mine to begin with. She filed a formal motion for Judge Caldwell's recusal, citing judicial misconduct and bias. Included in the filing were screenshots of the viral clip, transcripts of Caldwell's statement, and the authenticated 1931 letter now verified by the Missouri Historical Society. By Monday morning, the courthouse was surrounded. Farmers in overalls, activists in blazers, reporters everywhere. It looked less like a court hearing and more like a moment in history. Inside, Hank sat beside Nora, wearing the same flannel shirt, sleeves buttoned, hands folded. He didn't shift when Judge Caldwell entered, but her demeanor had changed. Gone was the confident gaze. Gone was the thin smile. Her voice was quieter. Court is now in session, she said, but sounded like surrender. Nora rose. Your Honor, we move for your immediate recusal based on verified bias, conduct unbecoming, and irrevocable loss of judicial neutrality. The judge tried to resist. This court doesn't respond to internet outrage. Nora replied, No, but it must respond to truth. Then Hank stood. You didn't just laugh at me, he said softly. You laughed at my daddy's hands, my granddad's boots, my mama's prayers, every person who ever built this country with dirt under their nails. Judge Caldwell didn't strike the gavel. She stood. She left. Resigned. Just like that. The case was reassigned to a federal circuit judge named Raymond Holt, known for being unshakable and unbothered. In court, he ruled without drama. By the second hearing, Nora submitted century-old deed records, crop maps, surveyor affidavits, and digital forensics showing falsified land surveys from Soul Harvest. The opposing counsel faltered. Their expert witness declined to testify. Judge Holt asked one question. Has this land ever legally changed hands? No, Your Honor. Then why was eminent domain pursued? No answer. Just silence. Then came the ruling. This court recognizes full ownership and deems all claims void. Further investigation is recommended regarding document fraud. It was over. Hank's land remained his, not through speeches, not through rage, but through truth held firm and dignity unbent. Outside, he gave only one statement. We worked that soil when it cracked, when it froze, when it flooded. I wasn't going to hand it over just cause someone came knocking with a clipboard. And America listened, because every once in a while, the dirt answers back. And this time, it spoke like thunder.